Good morning, grandkids. How is everybody this morning? I have a couple of things I wanted to go over, and I wanted to start reading another story that I'm going to start writing if you guys like it. If not, I won't continue with it. I'll later do something. But I'm still writing dorkly. I'm not through with that at all yet. First of all, I wanted to say, and when I did my vlog about the books that I read, these two religious books that I showed you, I said something wrong concerning the author on one. My brain's going crazy. Anyway, this first one, The Skeptic's Search of God, is by Ralph O. Mancaster. But I said when I showed you the next book, which was Agents of the Apocalypse, that it was the same author. But as you can see, it isn't. It's Dr. David Jeremiah. So I just wanted to make that correction for anybody that was paying attention to that. I also want to say thank you for all the Merry Christmas wishes that I got. I appreciated that very much. And now I want to read this first chapter of another story I started to write that I thought about reading after we're through with Dorkly, the wizard, young wizard, which won't be for a while yet. But I wanted you to tell me if you like the sound of this new one I started. If you do, I'll keep writing chapters for it, and it will be my next book to read to you. If you don't care for it, then I'm not going to continue writing it because I can't keep writing just for myself. All through the years I've tried to, and I always quit. So let me know what you think of it. If you don't particularly care for it, then I'll start writing something else. There's there's 6 pages in this chapter. Okay, this one is called, I got to show you what I drew just for myself for the front page in my notebook that I'm writing in. Look at this. Those are ghostly looking trees in a forest. And the title of the book is The Forest Phantom. I thought that looked a little sinister and silly. Okay, here we go. So this is the Forest Phantom. At a high elevation, a creek meandered downward between 2 mountain peaks. On my side of the creek, there was a mile-deep verge of grass back to my little village, Black Rock, which nestled snugly against the mountain less than a couple of miles from the top of it. A forest grew from the back of the village, thinning out as it reached the top of tumbled stones and snow. The sun was short-lived from the top of my mountain to the top of the higher mountain just across the creek. We farmed just enough food for ourselves and raised a few cattle, pigs, and chickens, and some horses. My name is Tucker, and here I had been born 15 years ago. There wasn't any school here. Whatever our parents knew, they taught us. Then we helped out where needed. There was only about 20 families who lived here, and life was easy. We had hard-working times and leisurely fun times. Then, a year or so ago, something changed. Few people travel through here. Now they don't tarry long. They feel uneasy, a slight fear of something unknown. They move on quickly. The people living here don't blame them. We feel the same unease. It hadn't always been this way, this awareness of something, not seen, but felt. Something hanging in the air. It had been slowly growing, long enough to have smothered our spirits, our town, under gloom and apprehension. Something Something unknown and unseen was on this mountaintop behind us. Something only felt, only sensed. My dad and I were sitting at the kitchen table talking while Mom was washing the dishes from lunch. "Tucker, you want to help go get some wood this afternoon? Your mom's out of wood for the cook stove and the fireplace, and old Mr. Dell on the farm next to us said some of his fencing needs replaced. I could use the help." "Sure, Dad," I said, and got up to go put my coat on while Dad finished his coffee. I donned a heavy sheep-lined coat, a thick wool cap, and pulled on my heavy boots. I went on outside, pulled out 2 sleds from the storage shed. I pulled the axe out of the chopping block and slipped it through a loop on my pants and pulled on my heavy gloves. I then was getting the rope on the sled around my waist, ready to pull it up the slope, when Dad came out. He got his gear, got his sled's rope secured, and we took off up the mountain. It wasn't long before the trees thinned out, giving way to barren ones. Their leaves were piling about among the skiff of snow that had fallen during the night. My dog Razor was running ahead of us, seeing what he could sniff out for fun. There were growths of evergreens that we passed through, which started to thin out as we climbed higher. Past these trees were others that were already bare, some kind of gnarly-limbed trees with knotholes that looked like faces watching me. Beneath were their brown, wrinkled leaves and broken twigs scattered among patches of snow. Their bark was dark and their limbs twisted awkwardly, crooked and misshapen, looking like they were reaching for me. I shivered and then shook my head to get rid of this nonsense. We stopped and Dad checked out the trees for a couple of good ones for us to get started on. We left the sleds on the path and walked out among the trees. I wondered where Razor was. I hadn't heard him barking for a while. I stood there a minute listening. Nothing, not even birds or squirrel. Finally, I heard him giving out a couple of low, throaty growls. I called out to him, "Hey, Razor, what you find, boy?" His answer was another low, almost growl. "He's probably sneaking up on some food or a snake to pester," Dad laughed. I pulled out my axe and started whacking on a small tree. Soon, Razor came racing past us and stopped not too far past a ways. He turned around, his head down low, looking back up where he had come from. Dad was laughing at him. "I think that snake may have made Razor think he was going to be lunch," and laughed some more. I had to smile, thinking of what the two must have looked like up there and what a scaredy cat Razor was. Dad and I both had a pile of chopped wood on the ground, so we each picked up an armload and carried it back to the sleds. Razor followed us and stayed there when we went back to our trees. The sun was going past the top of the mountain, making it a little gloomy where we were. Not far away, I thought I saw something. I stopped chopping and stood there. I could swear I'd seen some kind of movement out of the corner of my eye. I looked over and saw some leaves just settling after moving around. No other leaves moved. Maybe there was a chipmunk on the ground there somewhere. I went back to chopping and soon carried another armload of wood over to the sled. Going back into the woods, I saw something again. I could almost see an outline of something, yet I couldn't. Not really. The leaves just below it moved again. I walked over to Dad and asked him if he'd been seeing anything. "Just the trees," he said. "What are you talking about?" I told him what I had seen. The last time, I know it wasn't a tiny animal on the ground, because it was also in the air, like the outline of something, but not a person or an animal. And it was sort of wavering. "Maybe you're starting to have some kind of eye problem," Dad said. "I haven't seen anything weird, although enough of the villagers have said they have." I walked back over to my tree, very slowly. Saw nothing, but I knew there had been some kind of movement in the air. Is this what the other villagers talked about? I saw that Razor had evidently headed back to the house. I started chopping again. Later, I was carrying another load of wood to the sled when I felt a movement of my long dark hair. I almost screamed, jerking around. Nothing was there. I dropped the wood on the sled and ran back to Dad, calling out to him, then telling him what had happened. "You're serious about this, aren't you, son?" he said, looking at me closely. "I know you're not one to make up stories." "No, Dad. There's something, I don't know what, but something's in these woods. And it messed with my hair." I almost shouted. "Okay, I think we have enough wood for a little while. Let's head on home," Dad said. "Looks like Razor already had that idea." And he smiled. I had built a stall on the side of our house, and we stacked our wood there and entered the side door. Mom was at the old cook stove, putting carrots into a boiling pot of water. Razor was sleeping near the warmth, lightly snoring. I wondered if he had felt or seen something strange in the woods. I could hear Dad talking to Mom in a low voice while I was in my room, stripping out of my coat, pulling on a heavy slip-on sweater. I ran my fingers through my hair and went into the kitchen. My mom looked at me worriedly, and we sat down to eat. Dad had told her what I had been seeing, I could tell. "Tucker," she said, "could you make out anything about what you was seeing?" "No," I said. "That's what was so creepy. Just movements in the leaves, in my hair, something shifting in the air. It was weird." My little brother, who I hadn't seen since breakfast, came in and plunked himself down on a chair. "Where you been, champ? Haven't seen you all day," I grinned. "Thought you'd run away." He grinned and said he'd been out front making tiny snowmen, then was in his room doing homework. At that, he Sorry, kiss. At that, he started grumping. "How did that go? The homework?" Dad asked. Champ muttered some more, then said, "Math sucks." "I remember that feeling, son," Dad chuckled. "Never was my favorite subject either." I said to Champ something was going on in the wood. Mom shook her head at me. "I think Razor found a snake," I said. "He hightailed it back to me and Dad and stayed there." That made him laugh. "So what kind of snowmen were you making?" "There was hardly any snow." "Tiny snowmen," he said. "I gave them big eyes and big white stone teeth. They looked more like frogs." We all laughed at that. That night, I lay in bed with my hands behind my head, staring up at the ceiling. I was thinking about the woods. and what was up there. I thought about what the villagers talked about. Tomorrow, as soon as I had time, I was going to talk to some of them, especially Mr. Dell. Then, soon, I was going to slip back up into the woods as soon as I could get away from the family. So that leaves us wondering what's going to happen with him when he goes up back into the woods by himself. And he'll probably take Razor, his dog. And I'm wondering what villagers will say to him that they feel or think. So if you like the beginning of this story, let me know, and I'll keep writing it so that I'll have more chapters ready when I want to start reading it in this series as soon as I finish Young Wizard Dorothy. But that won't be a while. It'll give me time to get some stuff written up. Okay, guys. Hope you've enjoyed the past weekend of Christmas, and I hope you'll all be good and come back and see me next time. So bye-bye for now, grandkids. Love you all.